So, how is any of this stuff relevant to you? It sounds just like nerd finicky pooping around, like, oh, cool, like interesting books and all this, Nostradamus and all this. But it's nothing of real consequence, is it? Actually, I'm here to surprise you because I've been punching democracy in the belly. I've been getting all you boyos to hold its arms back, and I've just been going ham at its liver and at its spleen, angrily and viciously being like, shut up, rationality. I'm getting Sam Harris, and I've been like belly slapping him until his belly goes red, and he cries out in tears and he's like, reason, save me, come save me, mathematics, come save me, and whatnot. But in fact, there is something profound about the individual's choices that are quite fascinating and important. You see, individuals most certainly do tilt history. Now, certainly some tilt history more than others, but I think this sort of general state of the collective mind could be seen as an amalgamation of millions of individuals, and how they make decisions in their day-to-day life is actually incredibly important, because if you have a population who listens to their conscience and doesn't buy the ice cream, you will tend to get a very healthy population, which will make stuff like healthcare cheaper, which will make stuff like everything better. They'll be more clear-headed, they'll make more healthy decisions, they're less likely to be crazy and angry and all this type of stuff. They'll just be in a lot better of a shape. But if you have a population that's constantly eating ice cream, constantly in despair because they're inflamed, constantly having mental disorders because they've got terrible gut rot, which is where 95% of their serotonin comes from and influences things like depression, and wage slaving in dark rooms where they don't get any sunlight, you're going to have a very, very fallen species, and that's going to turn history in a certain direction that is not necessarily where we want to go, I guess, unless you're trying to destroy a people or something like this. And so the choices that individuals make is huge. Now, on a personal level, the great war that the individuals have against the system or the forces above them or even the people above them in power is that they do have to often stand for their conscience and what is difficult and scary, as opposed to what is programmed into them via the voices from outside the world. Think about that drill sergeant who tells you to shut up and sit down. That makes you afraid. But what if the drill sergeant is doing something wrong or is tyrannically oppressing you? Sometimes you have to listen to your conscience and say, stand up and fight, even if it's going to cost you your life, or stand up and speak out like St. Stephen did or Jesus Christ did, something like that. That is the virtue of listening to this Holy Spirit inside your head, this voice coming in from inside your head. And you'll notice that some of the most tyrannical regimes of all precisely try to wage this war here. It seems like stuff like perhaps the Soviet Union and whatnot were orchestrated towards getting people to distrust their conscience, to actually invalidate their conscience, to lie about their conscience. You were supposed to see things that were absurd and agree with them, even though your conscience would say to you, that's bullshit, that's not real. And that was the way that they controlled you. It was the ultimate form of conquest, because they conquered your soul and they made you love Big Brother, as George Orwell talked about at the very end. He broke the person to make him say certain things that weren't true. Now, this is a very, very, very interesting problem, because as you're going through history, the great moments where the conscience comes in and influences things, tilts things in a certain direction. You have the Romans and the Greeks, and imagine a general like Julius Caesar, and his wife says to him, I had a dream last night and it said don't go to the Senate. And of course Julius Caesar heard that, and maybe his conscience said to him don't go to the Senate, but he ignored that and he ended up getting stabbed, and then that turned history in a certain direction. But did it really influence history that much? I'm not sure. God's plan might have gone on anyway, because Augustus rose up as emperor, the thing they were trying to stop. Jesus Christ is the same. He could have just went along with the crowd, but instead he decided to die for his connection with the Lord. And this led him to be the most significant figure to ever live. Each Germanic king, as they were conducting themselves in the world, they probably had these moments of crisis where they sat down and it's like, should I keep fighting, should I keep building, or should I cry and run off and ignore, or something like that. But of course maybe that conscience came to them and led them to do certain deeds that were quite significant, just like we're talking about with all these people here, like Descartes and Napoleon and Martin Luther and all this type of thing. This happens to everybody. This is a constant presence throughout your life, and you can kind of see it as there's this strange movement to history of some sort. It's like the kind of collective right brain can see what's going on, and it moves down and tilts you in the right direction, tries to get you on what you might say is the right side of history. That was the sort of experience of Jesus Christ, is when Christianity came in, everybody's conscience started to update to Christianity. Everybody started to see the Holy Spirit as opposed to maybe the old pagan gods, and it seemed like that was the wave of history as it was going. And in some sense it was probably best for you to get on board with that, because if you didn't, some German king might have came in and genocided your little village for being pagan, and that becomes a bit of an issue, because then you're kind of thinking to yourself, what is the truth? What is the wave of history? Where is it going? What do I get on board with? What do I update myself with? How do I understand myself? What do I listen to? What is real? What is my conscience? For example, in Christianity, the old god of frenzy, Odin, was slowly demonized into the devil. And so when Odin, or whatever Odin was supposed to represent, would pop up into the courtroom and speak out, and people, the left brain of people, had learned to push him out of the way and say, no, he is wrong, he's evil, he's bad. But of course, 1,000 years ago, they would have seen that as being visited by God himself. Such a radical change. And so all of this brings us to very, very interesting ideas, because this is the collective unconscious of mankind changes, it changes how we make decisions, it changes what we follow, it changes what we obey. And for you, when you're sitting there in your crisis mode asking yourself, what is my purpose? What do I do with my life? What do I trust? What do I follow? You in some sense are making this choice. You were saying to yourself, what would be the better version of my life, or the better version of myself I'd have to become to fulfill that slot? And whatever you choose will dictate what that means, what that is. If you choose freedom, then you're going to get on board with, the God of freedom, liberty, perhaps, or something like that. Now, that has some serious consequences, because maybe Jesus isn't necessarily the God of freedom. He might be the God of truth or righteousness. And are these things the same thing? It's hard to know. And you've got to be careful. What are you worshipping? Maybe you choose another God and it's something else. You choose the God of pleasure, and it brings you in a certain direction. You choose the God of cheating and lying and being mischievous, and it might bring you in a certain direction. And all of them could bring you into various forms of success, and you get led in a certain direction. But I guess the big question we have are, what are the active forces in the world that are driving history? In some sense, if we were able to look up to the sky and look at what everybody is kind of shooting up as like the canvas, painting on the canvas to tell us what's active, what's going on in history right now. Think about the video I made about Makina. That was perhaps me going through that experience and kind of throwing something up to stick to the sky for people to look at. In the same sense, what would we sort of see? What would be up there and what would we see? And what would be kind of pushing? What way would the world be going?